Hi everyone. Welcome English Story School. Today's story is about the devastating journey of World War III. Its chaos, sacrifices, and the incredible resilience of humanity that rises from the ashes of destruction. Part 1. The question that changed everything. Have you ever found yourself lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, contemplating the unimaginable? What if the world as we know it was thrown into chaos, so intense, so all-consuming, that it reshaped the course of history? The thought that lingers, haunting us all. What if World War III happens? In the quiet moments of uncertainty, we hear the whispers of a future we'd prefer to ignore, yet can't seem to escape. A world on the edge of disaster. A world where every decision holds the weight of countless lives, and every action could alter the fate of entire nations. A moment in time when humanity stands at the crossroads, caught between peace and annihilation. It's in that quiet space between possibility and peril where this story begins. A time when the stakes are not just high, but unimaginably immense. Imagine standing on the precipice of a battle where the stakes aren't just land or power, but humanity's very existence. In this world, every choice is a gamble, every action a decision that could tip the delicate balance of civilization. You don't hear it in the headlines or see it on the news. It's the heartbeat of millions of ordinary people, soldiers, citizens, families, leaders, all caught in the same storm, struggling to find meaning and hope amidst the whirlwind of conflict. The warriors of this war aren't just those who wear uniforms, but the very essence of human courage, ambition, and willpower. This is not just about guns, tanks, or airstrikes. It's about something far deeper, something much more terrifying and awe-inspiring. In moments like these, it's the spirit of the human race that is tested. It's tested in the battlefield of the mind, where individuals must summon their deepest fears, hopes, and resilience to stand strong against an enemy that does not care for borders, beliefs, or backgrounds. And what emerges from this is not just a story of war, but of the collective strength and sheer will to survive. As we step into this narrative, we're not just looking at strategies and the cold calculations of military power. We're looking at the heartbeats of those who live it. Those who have nothing but their courage and faith in each other to guide them through the darkest times. It's in these moments, the choices made under duress, the bravery displayed under fire, and the unbreakable bonds formed amidst chaos, that the true spirit of humanity shines brightest. What would World War III look like? How would it unfold? Not from the perspective of the generals or the politicians, but from the eyes of the people who are caught in its maelstrom. Could it be more than just a conflict of weapons and technology? Could it be a defining moment for humankind, a final test of how we rise or fall together? In this world, we must ask ourselves, how much are we willing to sacrifice for the future? How far are we willing to go to protect those we love, our values, and our way of life? Because in this war, it's not just the weapons that determine the outcome. It's the resilience of the human spirit, the unyielding drive to keep going even when everything around us falls apart. This is not a story for the faint-hearted. This is a story of survival. A story of the fierce battle that rages not just in the trenches, but in the hearts and minds of every person who dares to dream of a better tomorrow. The kind of story that takes us beyond the political rhetoric and straight into the gut-wrenching truth of what it means to fight for your future. Because in the end, this is what makes us human. And this is just the beginning. In the face of the greatest adversity, we discover the true measure of our strength. Part 2. The spark that ignites. It all begins with a spark. A single, seemingly insignificant event that sets everything in motion. You see, history has shown us time and again that wars don't start overnight. They don't begin with the thunderous roar of cannons or the flash of rockets. No, wars begin in the quietest of places, with words, decisions, and moments that are too small to notice until it's too late. A slow burn, like whispers in the wind, gradually growing louder, stronger, until it becomes impossible to ignore. The world is a complex web of power, resources, ideologies, and ambitions. Nations are constantly vying for supremacy, locked in a delicate dance of alliances and betrayals. The world's superpowers, each holding a vision of what the future should look like, each believing they have the answer, the solution, the way forward. The battle isn't just about land or wealth. It's about control of the future itself. A future shaped by ideas, technology, and the will to dominate. As the world spins faster, so does the tension. Nations that were once allies become rivals, and those that once shared a common goal now find themselves at odds. Every movement is calculated, every alliance forged with the expectation of betrayal. It's a world of fractured alliances, broken promises, and hidden agendas. Beneath the surface, the world is held together by an ever-thinning thread, the weight of every nation's ambition pressing down upon it. But even in such a world, there are moments where everything could be tipped over the edge. A wrong word, a misstep in diplomacy, a handshake that isn't quite what it seems. These are the moments that ignite the fuse, the moments that transform the brewing tension into open conflict. One rash decision, one tiny spark, and the world is set ablaze. The wisdom of history echoes through time. War does not determine who is right, only who is left. The words of history's greatest minds ring true. In the end, it's not the strength of armies or the power of weapons that will define the outcome. It's the resolve of those who survive, those who remain standing in the aftermath, scarred but unbroken. It's a single mistake, a miscalculation of power that ignites the fury. A speech misunderstood, an old alliance betrayed, a threat made in haste. These are the triggers, the sparks that set the world on fire. At first, it seems so small, just a ripple in the water. But that ripple spreads, gradually swelling into a tsunami. Countries react, power shifts, and soon, the world is caught in the grips of a war that no one saw coming. The price of greatness is responsibility, Winston Churchill once said. The leaders who stand at the helm of nations must carry that weight, knowing that one wrong move could plunge the world into chaos. But in the heat of the moment, with egos clashing and national pride on the line, that responsibility is often forgotten. The drive for dominance clouds judgment, and before long, the path to war becomes inevitable. The catalyst is often something personal, something that resonates deeply within the heart of the leader. A perceived insult, a threat to national pride, or the desire to protect a legacy. The soldiers, too, are driven by a sense of duty, loyalty, and honor. But deep within, they too know they are part of something much larger than themselves. And the cost of that loyalty may soon become unbearable. And so, in an instant, the world is plunged into chaos. The moment that starts it all is as unpredictable as it is swift. Just as one spark can set fire to an entire forest, so too can one mistake plunge the world into war. The power of those first moments, when everything is still in the balance, cannot be underestimated. Every decision is magnified. Every gesture carries weight. It is in these moments that the course of history is changed, and the very future of humanity hangs in the balance. The leaders now find themselves on a precipice, a place where every decision could either prevent the storm or push it further along. In war, there are no winners, only survivors. And as the world teeters on the brink, we must ask, will there be enough wisdom to stop the madness? Or will the spark ignite something far greater than any of us can comprehend? A single spark can set the world ablaze. A single choice can alter the course of history. Part 3. The Prelude, A World Divided. As the shadow of World War III looms larger on the horizon, the world finds itself a fractured entity, its once unbreakable unity now splintering under the weight of competing ideals. Nations that were once allies, bound by mutual interests and the shared desire for progress, now find themselves on opposite sides of a line that seems impossible to cross. The peace they once promised each other is now a distant memory, replaced by the harsh reality of distrust, fear, and escalating hostility. The world is no longer united under the banner of diplomacy. Instead, it is a place where every nation is a battleground. It's not just the armies of the world that are preparing for war. It's the very fabric of society itself that is being torn apart. The ideological divide is as stark as the line that separates East from West, North from South. Nations once bound by shared values now find themselves at odds, with one side calling for peace and the other, driven by a hunger for power, unwilling to back down. At the heart of this conflict lies not just the pursuit of land or resources, but the fight for survival itself. For some, survival means preserving the old ways of life. For others, it means reshaping the world according to new ideals and ambitions. The world has become a patchwork quilt of competing ideologies, each one vying for dominance, each one believing that its version of reality is the only one that matters. This is not just a war of armies, but a war of ideas, a clash of beliefs and values. Every nation, every faction, has its own vision of what the world should look like. Some believe in the power of the state, others in the strength of the individual. Some champion democracy, others autocracy. The very notion of freedom itself becomes a battlefield, with each side claiming to fight for its preservation, even as they tear down the freedoms of others in the process. As the world divides, so too do the people. Ordinary citizens, once content to live their lives in peace, are now thrust into the maelstrom of a war that they never asked for. These are the true warriors of the conflict, not just the soldiers who march off to fight, but the people who stand in solidarity, each one driven by a cause larger than themselves. The street protests, the underground movements, the cries for justice and equality, they're all a part of the war for hearts and minds, the unseen struggle that will shape the future of humanity. It is in these moments of division that we see the true resilience of the human spirit. The world may be fractured, but the strength of those who fight for what they believe in cannot be measured by borders or ideologies. The greatest glory in living lies not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall, said the great Nelson Mandela. And in these turbulent times, this spirit of resilience becomes the beacon of hope. The people may have been driven to the edge of despair, but they refuse to break. They rise, time and time again, not just for themselves, but for their children, their communities, and the future of a world that seems to be slipping away from them. But as the war for survival intensifies, it becomes clear that this is no longer just a fight for the future. It's a battle for the very soul of humanity. As the divisions deepen and the stakes grow ever higher, the question becomes, will the world be able to overcome its differences and stand united, or will it be forever torn apart by the forces of division that have taken root in every corner of the globe? In the face of all this, the question remains, what does it mean to survive? Is survival merely the act of enduring the physical conflict, or is it something deeper, something more profound? In a world divided by ideologies, by beliefs, and by power struggles, survival becomes a reflection of the very essence of human existence. To survive is not just to exist, but to stand firm in the face of chaos, to fight for what is right, and to believe that, no matter how dark the days become, there is always a chance to rise again. And so, as the world spins closer to the precipice, every nation and every individual must ask themselves, what side will we choose? What do we fight for? And what will we become in the process? The choices made in the days ahead will echo for generations to come, shaping the world for better or for worse. The war is coming, and with it, the final test of what it means to be human. The greatest walls we face are not those made of stone, but those built in our hearts and minds. Part 4. The first strike, a shock wave across the globe. The silence before the storm is deafening. The world, once filled with the mundane rhythm of daily life, now stands on the edge of destruction. In the blink of an eye, everything changes. The first strike lands. It is not a single missile, nor a single bomb that makes its mark. No. This is a series of well-coordinated, tactical precision strikes, each one timed perfectly to maximize shock, to disrupt, to break. Cities that were once vibrant with life now lie in ruin, and the world, stunned, watches as the shock waves ripple across the globe. The first targets are the power centers, the nerve centers of the world's most influential nations. Major cities fall, not in the slow, inevitable collapse of a crumbling empire, but with brutal, sudden force. Communications break down, and the world's systems, economic, social, political, start to crack under the pressure. News outlets, once the lifeline of truth, are reduced to chaos, with information flowing in every direction but truth. In the midst of this confusion, leaders falter, unsure of how to regain control, and the international order, once so meticulously crafted, begins to disintegrate. But amidst the panic, a strange thing begins to happen. People, ordinary people, start to unite, not out of fear, but out of a shared desire to survive. From the ashes of global disaster, something miraculous takes shape: resilience. It is not fear that drives them, but the unyielding determination to rebuild, to resist, to stand together when the whole world seems to be falling apart. Soldiers from across the globe, from every corner of the earth, find themselves fighting side by side. They are not there because they were told to fight. No, they are there because they have chosen to stand together. A shared purpose, a common cause, binds them now, something far stronger than orders from a distant general. In the trenches, they don't ask about borders or politics. They ask about humanity. The first strike has set the world ablaze, but in this chaos, the fire does not only consume, it also forges something new. People who have been enemies for centuries are now fighting as allies, not because they have been told to do so, but because they understand that survival is no longer about winning against each other. It is about surviving together. It is in these desperate moments that true unity is formed. There are no longer individual nations. There's only one common goal: to survive, to rebuild, to fight not just for the end of this war, but for the future that still remains. In these early days of the conflict, there are no heroes, just people trying to hold on to their humanity. And though the chaos is overwhelming, something in the human spirit refuses to be broken. In the darkest times, when it seems as though all hope has been extinguished, it is hope that burns the brightest within. It is hope that becomes the weapon, the shield against despair. In the darkest times, hope is something you give yourself. That's the meaning of inner strength. These words, so simple yet so powerful, guide them as they navigate through the ruins. What began as a terrifying shockwave has now transformed into something unexpected: solidarity. The nations that once stood divided now find themselves with a common enemy: destruction. It is no longer about who started the war, but about who will finish it. And in this battle, victory will not be measured by territory or power, but by the resilience of the human heart. Every individual, whether a soldier, a civilian, or a leader, has a role to play in the survival of what remains of the world. As the first wave of attacks reverberates across the globe, governments scramble to maintain some semblance of order, but it is no longer the governments that hold the world together. It is the people. In this moment of collective crisis, the ordinary citizens of the world become the true warriors. Their courage, their willingness to stand firm in the face of overwhelming odds, defines the future of this conflict. The world is teetering on the brink of total annihilation, but in the midst of the destruction, something new is born: unity. What once seemed impossible, people from different nations, different cultures, different beliefs, now fighting as one, is the spark of a new world. And that spark, that ember of resilience, becomes the foundation for the long road ahead. The first strike may have shattered the old world, but in its wake, it has ignited a new fire, one that can either burn out or blaze into something far greater than anyone could have ever imagined. In the aftermath of destruction, the foundation of our unity is the only thing that remains unbroken. Part 5. The Resistance, Rising from the Ashes. Amid the devastation of war, as the world lies shattered, a force begins to emerge from the wreckage. This isn't an army in the traditional sense with ranks and uniforms, but something more profound: an idea, a movement, a force born of necessity. The first spark of rebellion doesn't come from the barrels of guns or the flash of bombs, but from the hearts of ordinary people who refuse to accept the end of everything they hold dear. It is the essence of defiance, the unwavering belief that no matter how far the world falls, it's not the destruction that defines us, it's the will to rise again. The world is in chaos, with governments crumbling and societies fractured. But from this very chaos, a resistance is born. These are not soldiers marching under the banner of a nation. These are everyday people: teachers, doctors, farmers, students, engineers, each from different walks of life, each bearing the weight of the world's grief on their shoulders. But there is one thing they share: an unyielding determination to survive, to protect their loved ones, and to restore what has been lost. In every city that falls, in every battle fought, the resistance grows. It's not built on a single ideology, but on a simple, powerful truth: we are stronger together than we are apart. The rebels are not fighting just for land or power, but for the right to live freely, to rebuild, to reclaim the future from the hands of those who sought to destroy it. And while the world outside crumbles, the resistance fights not just with weapons, but with courage and unity, forces that can never be measured in the same way as armies or bombs. The resistance takes shape in the shadows, in hidden bunkers and underground networks. It's a movement that thrives on secrecy and surprise, made up of people who understand that the true strength of their cause lies in the strength of their will. It's an idea that doesn't depend on numbers or firepower. It depends on belief. The rebels understand that to defeat the powers that have brought the world to the brink, they must fight with something that cannot be quantified: the belief that the future is worth fighting for, that every life, every soul has value. As the resistance grows, so does its resolve. In the face of overwhelming odds, they don't back down. They don't give in. Strength does not come from physical capacity. It comes from an indomitable will. These words echo in the hearts of the rebels, for they know that it is not the size of their forces or the power of their weapons that will win this fight. It is the strength of their collective will to rise, to persist, to stand up against the darkness. The resistance is not a monolith. It is a collection of countless voices, each one contributing to the chorus of defiance. Some come from cities that once teemed with life, now nothing more than smoldering ruins. Others come from villages that have never known war, but whose simple lives have been torn apart by the conflict. They bring with them stories of loss, of hope, and of survival. They come together to create a force that cannot be ignored, a force that refuses to die, no matter how fierce the storm around them becomes. What begins as small pockets of defiance soon becomes a force to be reckoned with. The resistance doesn't just fight with guns, they fight with the power of stories, with the strength of their collective memory. They understand that to rebuild the world, they must first reclaim it from those who would erase everything they hold dear. Each battle they fight is not just for survival, but for the future itself. They know that they're not just fighting for the present moment, but for the generations that will follow, for the children who will inherit what they leave behind. As the resistance grows in strength, it begins to spark hope in others. The world may be broken, but it is not beyond repair. People who once believed the war was lost now find themselves standing with the rebels, sharing their strength, their vision, and their hope. It's a ripple that spreads across borders, through cities and towns, across continents. From the ashes of destruction, the flame of rebellion burns brighter, fueled by the collective will of those who will not let the world slip away into the darkness. In the heart of every resistance fighter burns a fire that can never be extinguished. Their strength comes not from the weapons they wield or the armies they command, but from the unyielding belief that the world, though broken, can be made whole again. This belief is what drives them forward, step by step, battle by battle. The struggle may be long, and the road may be fraught with peril, but they know that victory is not just the end of the war. It's the restoration of what was lost. It's not the weapons we wield that define us, but the courage we carry within. Part 6. The Turning Point, a Battle for the Future. The war has escalated beyond anyone's wildest imagination. What started as a conflict over territory and ideologies has grown into something far more profound. A fight not just for supremacy, but for the very future of humankind. The world finds itself at a crossroads. The road to peace seems more elusive with each passing day, while the path to destruction grows clearer, marked by the smoldering ruins of cities, the cries of the fallen, and the relentless march of time. Every battle fought, every decision made, is now a gamble, not for victory alone, but for the survival of everything humanity has built. It's at this critical juncture that the world begins to feel the weight of its choices. Every action, every movement in the battlefield is a decision that could tip the balance between despair and hope. The stakes are higher than ever, and every side knows that the future will be shaped by the outcome of these pivotal moments. Leaders, generals, and even ordinary civilians understand that they stand on the edge of something far greater than a single war. They stand on the edge of history itself. In the midst of this chaos, something remarkable begins to unfold. Heroes are made. These aren't the legends of old, the knights in shining armor, or the superhuman warriors of myth. No, these are ordinary individuals, thrust into extraordinary circumstances, who rise to become symbols of hope, courage, and resilience. They are not defined by their weapons or their titles, but by their unwavering belief in a future worth fighting for. Every corner of the world witnesses these stories of transformation. Soldiers who, once fearful of what was to come, now lead with an unshakable resolve. Civilians who, once passive bystanders to history's unfolding, now take up arms, not out of necessity, but because they refuse to watch as their future is destroyed. A teacher, once content to educate in the safety of a classroom, becomes a strategist, guiding the rebels with the wisdom of knowledge. A mother, once terrified of losing her children, now leads a group of refugees to safety, her strength becoming the backbone of a community. This is the moment when humanity's greatest strength reveals itself, the unbreakable spirit that rises even in the face of overwhelming adversity. As the war rages on, the world begins to see that it's not just the power of weapons that determines the outcome. It's the unity of purpose, the shared vision of a better future, and the unyielding will to survive. These aren't just soldiers fighting. They're the very embodiment of humankind's deepest values: love, hope, and sacrifice. In this critical turning point, the world is forced to reckon with itself. The future is no longer something that can be taken for granted. The choices made now will echo through time, shaping the world for generations to come. It is a battle not just for survival, but for what that survival means. Will the future be one where humanity rebuilds, rises, and learns from its past mistakes? Or will it be a future lost to the horrors of conflict? A future where the lessons of the past are forgotten and the mistakes of history are repeated? It's in these moments of uncertainty that the power of unity becomes undeniable. When the world is fractured, when hope seems all but lost, it is the collective strength of individuals coming together that begins to shine the brightest. What was once divided, torn apart by ideologies and ambitions, now finds common ground. The resistance, once small, isolated, and fragmented, has now become a formidable force. Its strength lies not in the size of its army, but in its ability to unify the world's people under a single banner: the fight for a future worth living. At this moment, humanity stands at the edge of a new dawn, and it is the choices made today that will determine whether that dawn is one of peace and prosperity or destruction and despair. The only limit to our realization of tomorrow is our doubts of today. These words ring true now more than ever. The doubts that once held humanity back, the fear of change, the fear of the unknown, must now be cast aside. For it is only by overcoming these doubts that the world can move forward, that the future can be secured. The turning point has arrived, and the world must decide: will it rise to the challenge, or will it crumble under the weight of its own fears? The road ahead is uncertain, the outcome still in question, but one thing is clear: this is the moment that will define us all. And in the end, it is not the weapons of war that will shape the future, but the strength of the human spirit. In every moment of uncertainty, the future is shaped by the choices we make today. Part 7. The Humanity in Chaos. In the darkest hours of war, when the world is consumed by destruction, it's easy to lose sight of the things that truly matter. The explosions, the smoke, the crumbling cities. These are the images that dominate the battlefield. Yet, amid the chaos, humanity finds a way to shine through. In the most devastating moments, when all seems lost, the strength of the human spirit rises like a beacon, cutting through the darkness. War, by its very nature, strips away the veneer of civility. It reduces everything to survival. Every decision is a matter of life or death. The battlefield becomes a place where fear, violence, and hatred rule, where every person is caught in the unforgiving grip of conflict. And yet, In the very heart of this chaos, something beautiful begins to emerge: kindness, sacrifice, and love. These are the qualities that no war can destroy, no matter how powerful the bombs or how fierce the fighting. Soldiers, hardened by the horrors they've witnessed, take a moment to save a civilian from the rubble. They risk their own lives, not for glory or honor, but because they cannot stand by while another human being suffers. In the midst of gunfire and chaos, there's a glimmer of compassion. Soldiers sharing their rations with children, helping injured comrades, and offering a hand to those in need. They fight not just for victory, but for something more profound: the preservation of humanity itself. A mother, her face etched with terror as the ground shakes beneath her, holds her child close during an air raid. The world around them is collapsing, but in her arms there's a quiet sanctuary. It is not the weapons or the war that defines her. It is the love for her child that gives her strength. This love, this primal instinct to protect and nurture, becomes her shield against the darkness. In the face of the most terrifying danger, the bond between mother and child transcends the destruction around them, reminding us all that even in the worst of times, human connection can still endure. Across the battlefields, as the smoke rises and the dust settles, soldiers from opposing sides look into each other's eyes and, for a brief moment, they see not an enemy, but another human being. In those fleeting seconds, there is no war, only the shared experience of survival. The desperation in their eyes tells a story of their own fears, their own hopes, and their own dreams of peace. The brutality of war has stripped them of their innocence, but it has also shown them the true power of empathy and understanding. In these moments of extreme adversity, it becomes painfully clear war is not just a battle of weapons, but a battle for the soul of humanity. Every act of kindness, every moment of sacrifice, and every expression of love is a victory in itself. It is the resistance against the darkness that war brings, the last shred of what makes us human. No one has ever become poor by giving. These words ring out as the soldiers give everything they have, be it food, water, or even their own lives, to help others. In the face of death, they choose to give, to share, and to care. This is the true cost of war. It demands everything, but in return, it offers the chance for humanity to rise, to endure, and to fight for something greater than victory. Amid the carnage, the spirit of human kindness cannot be extinguished. It's woven into the very fabric of the human experience, something that no weapon, no battle, no enemy can erase. In the most devastating of times, when all seems lost, humanity finds a way to endure, not through might or force, but through the simple acts of love, compassion, and unity. It is in these moments that we are reminded of what is worth fighting for. The war may have taken everything from them: homes, families, dreams, but it has not taken their humanity. And as long as that humanity remains, as long as that flicker of hope continues to burn, there is always a reason to keep fighting. For even in the darkest of times, when everything seems beyond repair, humanity shines through. Even in the darkest times, the human spirit rises from the ashes stronger than ever before. Part 8. The Strategy, the Art of War. As the war escalates to unprecedented heights, the world's battlefields transform into a complex and multifaceted arena. The clash of armies once fought with swords and shields has evolved into a high-stakes, high-tech struggle that reaches beyond the horizon of traditional combat. The strategies employed are not limited to physical force. They're a blend of intelligence, technology, and human willpower. Each side fights not just with weapons, But with every tool available, from cyber warfare to sophisticated intelligence networks, and even the art of diplomacy, on the battlefield, the very rules of engagement are rewritten. The soldiers who once fought face-to-face in trenches now find themselves pitted against invisible enemies. The world is introduced to a new kind of warfare: cyber attacks. Systems are hacked, information is stolen, and nations' critical infrastructures are brought to their knees without a single shot being fired. It's a new dimension of combat, one that is fought in the dark corners of the digital world, where nations can cripple each other with the press of a button. This is no longer just a war of soldiers, but a war of data and information. A hacker's fingers are as deadly as a soldier's rifle. Simultaneously, guerrilla tactics are employed in the physical world, turning the battlefield into a maze of traps, ambushes, and psychological warfare. The traditional methods of warfare, with their grand armies and large-scale battles, give way to small, agile units moving in and out of cities, striking when least expected and disappearing before the enemy can react. These tactics are designed to wear down the opponent, to create chaos, and to force them to fight on the resistance's terms, not their own. It's a war of attrition, where every inch gained is a hard-fought victory, and every decision made can turn the tide of battle in an instant. Nations no longer deploy armies of foot soldiers alone. They bring forth their full arsenal: diplomats who weave webs of alliances, spies who gather secrets and pass them on like precious currency, and technology experts who build new tools for warfare. The lines between war and peace become blurred as alliances shift and break with dizzying speed. Diplomacy, once a quiet gameplay behind closed doors, becomes just as crucial as the weaponry on the front lines. The chessboard of global politics expands, and every move, every gesture, can either make or break a nation. But in the midst of all the tactics, technologies, and high-stakes maneuvers, military leaders begin to realize a harsh truth. The true battlefield is not only fought in the trenches or in cyberspace. It's fought in the hearts of the people they lead. The soldiers they command are not just instruments of war. They're human beings with hopes, fears, and dreams. It is not enough to command them with force alone. They must be inspired, driven by a cause greater than the war itself. In the heat of battle, leaders are confronted with an uncomfortable reality. As much as they may plan for victory through strategies and weapons, the true power lies in their ability to unite, to inspire, and to motivate the men and women who follow them. The best warriors are those who are not only brave, but wise enough to know when to fight and when to stand down. It is wisdom, more than strength, that wins the day. The leaders who recognize when to push forward and when to pull back, when to take risks and when to conserve their forces, are the ones who will ultimately determine the course of this war. As the world's leaders strategize, they must grapple with the morality of their decisions. Every tactic, every action carries a cost, not just in terms of lives lost, but in terms of the very principles they are fighting to preserve. The line between right and wrong becomes increasingly difficult to distinguish, and leaders must confront the question: at what point does the pursuit of victory become a betrayal of everything they stood for? In these moments, military strategy becomes not just about outmaneuvering the enemy, but about staying true to the ideals they are fighting to protect. It is a balancing act, a delicate dance between force and restraint, between power and wisdom. Leaders must not only be tacticians, but philosophers, constantly evaluating the ethical implications of their choices. The true test of strategy is not how much territory one can gain, but how one can preserve the humanity of those caught in the crossfire. The soldiers, the civilians, the families, they're all affected by the choices made on the battlefield. It is here, in the thick of the war, that leaders must ask themselves, what will this war ultimately achieve? Will it create a better world, or will it tear humanity apart beyond repair? In the end, the strategies employed during this conflict will not only be remembered for their brilliance or their failures. They will be remembered for how they shaped the world that comes after, the world that must rebuild from the ashes of war. The true strategy of this war lies not in the weapons wielded or the intelligence gathered, but in the ability of humanity to rise from the devastation, to learn from its mistakes, and to build something better from the ruins. True victory is not won by might, but by the wisdom to know when to fight and when to stand still. Part 9. The Cost, Sacrifice, and Valor. War is never without its cost. It sweeps through cities like an unstoppable storm, leaving only ruins in its wake. Buildings that once stood as symbols of progress and culture are reduced to rubble, their crumbling facades a silent testament to the destruction that follows in war's path. The vibrant hum of life, once felt in bustling streets, now fades into an eerie silence, broken only by the occasional cry of anguish or the roar of distant gunfire. Entire communities, once united by shared experiences and bonds, are torn apart as families are separated, their futures uncertain, their lives shattered in an instant. This is the face of World War III. It's a war that ravages the land, but it's not just the cities and landscapes that are left in tatters. It's the human heart that bears the deepest wound. In the chaos of battle, lives are lost. Men and women, fathers and daughters, sons and mothers. A life that was once full of potential and promise is snuffed out in a single moment, leaving nothing but emptiness in its wake. Yet, amid the destruction, there emerges a story that is far more than just one of devastation. It is a story of sacrifice, of valor, of the unbreakable human spirit that refuses to be crushed, even when everything around it seems to fall apart. Every person who stands for what they believe in, who takes up arms not out of hatred, but to protect their loved ones, becomes a symbol of the strength that lies at the core of humanity. Every soldier who falls on the battlefield is not just another casualty. He is a testament to the power of the human will, the incredible capacity for selflessness, and a profound depth of love that can drive someone to lay down their life for a cause greater than themselves. In the thick of battle, in the shadow of death, these soldiers understand that they are fighting not just for territory, but for the very ideals that make them human: freedom, justice, and love. Each one of them knows that their sacrifice, however small it may seem, is part of something much larger. It is a collective struggle, one that will define not just the present, but the future of every soul who survives. The pain of loss is immense, but it is nothing compared to the hope that burns in the hearts of those who remain. And in the midst of that pain, it is the courage to rise again that matters most. Sacrifice is not just the stuff of soldiers. It's the legacy of every person touched by war. It's the mothers who wait, hearts heavy with worry, praying for the safe return of their children. It's the doctors who work tirelessly to save lives, knowing that every moment spent saving one life could cost another. It's the civilians who stand at the front lines, not with weapons, but with the quiet strength of those who fight for their survival, for their children's futures, and for the hope of rebuilding what has been destroyed. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. These words resonate louder than ever in the wake of war. It's not just soldiers who sacrifice for the ones they love. It's the communities, the families, the individuals who give everything they have to protect those who cannot fight for themselves. It is the teacher who stays behind to help her students escape the violence, the neighbor who risks their life to save a family from the wreckage, and the leader who lays down their own ambitions for the sake of their people's future. And yet, the cost of war doesn't end with the loss of life. It stretches far beyond the battlefield, reaching into the very soul of a society. The emotional scars, the trauma left behind, are the unseen casualties of war. It is the hollow look in the eyes of a child who has lost everything, the silence that hangs in the air after a family is torn apart, the deep ache that never truly fades from a heart that has seen too much. These are the wounds that cannot be healed by any soldier's victory, no matter how great. But in the midst of this darkness, a flicker of light remains. The human spirit, though battered and bruised, does not break. It bends, it sacrifices, it endures. In every act of kindness, in every effort to rebuild, in every moment of bravery, there is a testament to the resilience of humanity. The greatest victories of this war are not the ones won on the battlefield, but the ones fought in the hearts of those who continue to move forward, despite the overwhelming weight of loss. War may take lives, it may destroy cities, and it may strip away everything that people have worked for, but it cannot extinguish the will to fight, the will to hope, and the will to love. Every sacrifice, no matter how small or great, becomes part of the legacy of humanity's strength. And when the war is over and the dust has settled, it will not be the weapons or the strategies that define the outcome. It will be the courage to rise from the ashes, to rebuild, and to carry forward the lessons learned in the hardest of times. No sacrifice is too great when made for the ones we love, for the future we dream of. Part 10. The Resolution, a New World Born. As the dust begins to settle and the echoes of war grow quieter, the world stands in the aftermath of devastation. Changed, broken, but not defeated. The silence that follows the chaos is deafening, a stark contrast to the fury that had torn through cities and nations. The battlefields, once rife with destruction and despair, now lay in ruins, like the scattered pieces of a shattered mirror reflecting the fractured state of the world. Yet, amid the ashes of this global catastrophe, something remarkable begins to happen. The world starts to rebuild, not just physically, but spiritually, emotionally, and ideologically. The war, while devastating, has ignited a transformation. The very ideals that once divided nations, power, control, dominance, have burned away, leaving behind the raw foundation of something new. What once seemed impossible now takes root: unity. The very idea that nations, once enemies, can come together not just to rebuild their cities, but to redefine their futures, becomes the cornerstone of a new world order. In the midst of destruction, a new hope rises from the rubble, one that is born not out of fear, but from a shared understanding of what is truly important: humanity. Countries, once locked in a bitter struggle for power and dominance, now extend olive branches across the wreckage of their former battlefields. They come together, not because they are forced to, but because they recognize that the only way forward is together. The war has stripped away the false pretenses of superiority, the illusions of invincibility, and laid bare the harsh truth: no nation can thrive in isolation. The fate of every country, every person, is intertwined with the others. And from this shared realization, a new world begins to emerge, one that values collaboration over competition, unity over division, and peace over war. In the face of the overwhelming destruction, nations begin to rebuild not just their infrastructure, but their relationships. Leaders who were once adversaries now sit at the same table, not with distrust, but with a shared purpose: to create a future that honors the sacrifices of the past. There is no longer a sense of us versus them. There is only us, the collective human race, bound together by the lessons learned in the crucible of war. And through this unity, something greater than victory emerges, a new hope for a better tomorrow. The future, once uncertain, is now filled with possibility. What was once a world marked by division, hostility, and fear is now a canvas, ready to be painted with the brushstrokes of hope, collaboration, and determination. The people, weary from the long years of conflict, are ready to turn the page. They are no longer shackled by the fear of the past, but are driven by the belief that, together, they can create something greater than anything that came before. A new world is born, not from the ashes of war, but from the courage to rise above it. And while the scars of war will remain for generations, the collective resilience of humanity becomes the bedrock upon which this new world is built. The road ahead will not be easy. There will be challenges, setbacks, and obstacles, but there is something stronger now than ever before. The shared belief that humanity, no matter how fractured or broken, can heal, rebuild, and thrive. The war may have taken lives, destroyed cities, and changed the course of history, but it has also birthed a new era, a time when the power of unity and collective is greater than any weapon, any army, or any ideology. In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. These words, so simple yet so profound, become the guiding light for this new world. It is not the bitter words exchanged in the heat of battle that will define the future, but the quiet moments of understanding, of compromise, and of solidarity that will shape the new world order. It is the silence that speaks louder than the roar of war, the silence of nations coming together, of people finding common ground, of leaders choosing peace over power. As the world begins to rebuild, it is clear this new world is not a utopia, nor is it a return to the past. It is a future forged in the fires of conflict, where every person, every nation, and every culture has a place. It is a future where the cost of war is never forgotten, but where the lessons learned guide every step forward. It is a world where hope reigns over fear, where unity replaces division, and where the spirit of humanity, tested by the harshest of trials, stands unbroken. The war may have ended, but the journey is just beginning. And as the world steps into this new era, it carries with it the promise of a better tomorrow, one where humanity has learned that peace, not war, is the true path to survival and prosperity. From the rubble of destruction, the foundation of a new world is built on unity and hope. Part 11, The Legacy, What We Learned. World War III, though one of the darkest chapters in human history, leaves behind more than just devastation and sorrow. In the ruins of cities and the silence of battlefields, there are invaluable lessons etched into the very fabric of humanity's story. This war, which tore apart nations, shattered families, and claimed countless lives, also forced us to confront the deepest truths about ourselves, our fragility, our resilience, and the incredible power of the human spirit. It teaches us that in the face of the greatest adversity, when all seems lost and the world seems to be unraveling at the seams, we have the power to rise. It shows us that we are not defined by our ability to wield weapons or command armies, but by the strength of our will, the depth of our compassion, and our unwavering belief in a better tomorrow. The true power of humanity lies not in the destruction we can cause, but in the construction we can create, together, united, driven by a common purpose. This war has shattered the illusion that power comes from control over others. It has shown us that strength does not lie in military might, but in our capacity to come together as one. In the darkest hours, when the weight of the world was too heavy to bear, it was not the tanks or bombs that brought about change. It was the soldiers, the civilians, the leaders, and the everyday people who chose to stand together, united in their shared belief in a future worth fighting for. It is in these moments of crisis that we see the true measure of our strength. Our ability to love, to care, to sacrifice for one another. These are the qualities that define us. Even when everything is taken from us, when the world seems to crumble beneath our feet, we still have the power to rise again. The resilience of the human spirit is not just a poetic notion. It is a living, breathing force that drives us forward, that gives us the courage to keep going when the road ahead seems impossible. Through the horror of war, we've learned that the bonds that unite us are far stronger than the divisions that seek to tear us apart. Ideologies, politics, and borders, these are the things that divide us, that lead us to war. But at our core, we are all human. We are all driven by the same desires for peace, for love, for safety, and for a better future for our children. The war, in its aftermath, has stripped away the artifice and left us with a simple truth. We are not so different after all. The lesson we must carry with us is this: our unity is our greatest strength. In times of peace, it is easy to forget this truth, to fall back into old patterns of division and mistrust. But in the shadow of war, in the face of the loss and pain, we remember. We remember that only together can we truly overcome the greatest challenges of our time. Only by standing side by side, with compassion and understanding, can we build a future that is worth the sacrifices made. The legacy of World War III is not just the physical scars it left on the earth, but the emotional and spiritual scars it left on our collective consciousness. It has taught us that no matter how great the darkness, there is always light to be found. It has shown us that our capacity for good is limitless, and that no war, no conflict, no tragedy can extinguish the flicker of hope that resides in every human heart. And so, as the world begins to rebuild, as the pieces of our shattered world are carefully put back together, we must ask ourselves, what kind of world do we want to create? Do we want to return to the same divisions that led us to war? Or do we choose a different path? One of unity, of compassion, of understanding? The choice is ours. The lessons we have learned, though painful, are precious. They are the foundation upon which we must build the future. In the end, it is not the weapons of war that define us, nor the leaders who commanded them. It is the strength of the people, the quiet heroes who rose from the ashes, the soldiers who fought not for conquest, but for survival, the families who rebuilt from the ground up, and the generations who will learn from the mistakes of their forebears. This is the legacy of World War III, a reminder that, in the face of destruction, we have the power to rise, to rebuild, and to create a better tomorrow. The greatest legacy of war is not what we lose, but what we choose to rebuild. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.